Hello, everyone. I have got a very, very important message tonight. And I know that I'm not a famous person right now. So, some people average rate will maybe listen to 3, 5, 6 minutes. Some people listen to the whole thing. But I want to explain a few things. It's not going to be too long, but really you need to know this and understand this. This is fresh revelation for me also, and we should always, no matter who we are, no matter what part of the body of Christ we play or how long we've been in it, we should always be seeking to be corrected and to advance into more truth always. And it's also just like God, as the generations go down, the truth should be going up. So as the generations come forth in their spirits, they have the potential for more revelation than the generations that came before them, if the church does it right. So what I'm going to say is that as prophets, we need to get off of the political subjects about the president so much. I'm not saying God doesn't give us a word. God gave me a word about Donald Trump in 2016. It was exactly the vision I saw exactly happened on that night. And God even told me at about 1 o'clock in the day of election day what state would put him in. And it was Pennsylvania. When they called Pennsylvania, they called it for Trump. So God showed me that. So God does do things like that. The Lord showed me something about the Supreme Court. But there are some prophets that are much more famous than me that I even enjoy listening to every now and then, that are getting off so much into the political spectrum that it's not even helping or feeding the children of God anymore. It might just come in part of their message. It might not be the whole thing. It might not be every message, but a lot of these messages, and I can see it because you can see a little bit of what I'll call the fleshly anger will come out every now and then. And that's not really how we're supposed to stand up and prophesy. I'm not saying that couldn't happen. But then I also heard one that the word he used to describe a certain group of people was something that I couldn't really see Jesus saying. But, we live, nobody's perfect. But the point is that prophets don't take down kings. In fact, if you look in the old days, kings could take down prophets. So if you look at Israel, I'm going to paint a little picture here. And it's not that, God can move things around when he wants to. It's not like it has to stick to this. But this is how God explained it to me. In Israel, after David, Solomon set up all these high places. The high places are at the top of the mountains where the altars to all the false gods are. And not one king after Solomon took them all down. There was only, I believe, 2 or 3 that took most of them down. And then one that took almost all of them down. Okay? But so if prophets are supposed to have that much authority, then why weren't they taken down? If you look at even Saul, Samuel and Saul, whenever Saul disobeyed twice, Samuel said, "This day the kingdom is ripped from you." But Saul was still in office, being punished by God for 20 years. Now I'm not using this to make any type of code. I'm just saying that Saul prophesied something about it, and then he moved on, and God took care of it. God sent an enemy army in to take Saul out. There's a lot of other examples of the kings killing the prophets. So that's why whenever Elijah looked into Jezebel's eyes, he knew he had to get out of there. Okay? And so he did. And he went, prophesied, and he went to the cave of Moses, where he received an enormous revelation that Elisha was to take up the mantle if he continued to follow him, and that he was going to be taken up in a chariot of fire, and who knows what else God revealed to him in that cave. But he knew he had to go. And when Elisha asked for a double portion of Elijah's mantle, and he still, with the double portion, didn't go and try to kill Jezebel. He anointed someone in the governmental sphere to go after her, who was Jehu. Jehu was anointed to be the next king. So when Elijah went up in a chariot of fire, left his mantle with a double portion of power in it, Elisha anointed Jehu immediately to be king, and Jehu grabbed a couple people with him, and they went immediately, and that's how Jezebel fell. You see, it takes a king anointing to take down a king, and God's the one who does that. So, if the church, this is really the blunt of my message, if the church would focus on their intimacy with Jesus Christ, their friendship with Jesus Christ, with God, if they would focus on that and not being lukewarm, in obeying God in everything He asks them to do, God would give us a president that would be wonderful. God is the one in charge of who sits in the Oval Office and who doesn't. So if we would do our job, but a lot of people are saying, well, we came out, we voted. I'm talking about as a church in the spirit. If you've heard some of the things that I've heard that have gone on at churches and in ministries, it would take your breath away how disgusting some of it is. And if we would do our job, and within that, there could be prophets could come along, and we could have some words, and there's nothing wrong with prophesying about an election. I mean, I've done it, but I just realized that if we as the church would do what we're supposed to do in the spirit, God would just raise up a king for us. And yeah, we know that we voted and that we actually won that election, but why isn't he sitting in the Oval Office? I think God's trying to show his body something. In fact, I've been thinking that since like day 3, I think after the election. Because I knew when I woke up, I was expecting it all to be overturned. And then God spoke to me and said, no, there's still stuff going on. And then he kept speaking to me, and he kept telling me that his will was for that, but that he was doing something. And then I began to realize, okay, the church is going through a learning period here, because I think we got a little too focused off on to certain people and certain things. And Jesus said to his disciples, beware of the leaven of the Pharisees, the Sadducees, and the Herodians. So leaven is something that you put a little bit in the flour and it works its way through over time. And it's so little, you can't even see it at first. But once it's like a day, I don't know, but I don't know the time frame, but a day or two later, it starts, you can see that it's in there, it's eating it up, the whole thing. Well, he said the Pharisees and the Sadducees, so these are mainly the religious, self-righteous people. And then the Herodians, these are the people that are the political people, okay? Because Herod was the king then, okay? He was a vassal king to Rome, but he was still the king. So the Herodians were people like, if Herod was running for president right now, they'd have a sign, Herod for president, you know. But back then, kings were appointed, you know, not voted for. But so I just really, all the true children of God, listen to me. If we get our lives right, if we get our lives right and vote for the right person, God will do this. He's testing the church. He's trying to teach the church something. He's trying to say, no matter what you do, no matter how you do it, if you don't get right with me, I'm not going to give you a righteous king, even if you voted correctly. Now, I'm not saying that that's prophecy, but just as much as I know my Lord, I could see him thinking that way. You remember whenever they were on Mount Sinai and they displeased him so much just because they wouldn't believe him. Oh, and then they made a golden altar to worship something else, which definitely means they didn't believe him. And he told Moses, he said, watch out, I'm going to wipe out 2 million people. And Moses stood in the gap and said, no. God can be negotiated with. And if we just do it right and follow him, if he would have came down and they wouldn't have been in disbelief, they wouldn't have built an altar, then whoever fell into the ground when Moses threw the 10 Commandments at it, people died. That wouldn't have happened if they would have just made sure their own spiritual life with God was right, by not having that altar, by staying in belief, remembering what God just did to deliver them from the greatest army on earth at that time and to part the Red Sea. My point is you, all of us as Christians, have to get our walk right. Are you hot or are you cold? You've got to be one of them. You can't be lukewarm. You can't. No matter how much you pray and how much you vote, if the country is lukewarm, God is not going to give us what we want. So I know that's kind of heavy and stuff, and it just really hit me, but just we have to get our hearts right with God. We need to be in a place where there are Spirit-filled people that are walking right with God and that we can talk to and that we can pray for and with. We need to be in a place where we're giving and we're sowing, because in that way we'll get back spiritually. We need to be helping people, giving to the poor when we see them. Just all kinds. We need to our tongues need to be bridled. How many Christians do I know that they just curse all day? And it's not that that's going to make you righteous or not, but it's just not good fruit. It's not a good witness for Christ. You know, I know people that gossip all day long, and they'll tell you they're a Christian. God doesn't like that. His name is being just put through the gutter at times, and he doesn't like that. So anyway, don't try to pick apart everything I've said too much. I just got up here and I told y'all what I said, but just let it hit your spirit and realize if we all get right with God, God will give us the right king. All right.